Tēnā koutou. Awhia mai. Welcome. On behalf of the University of Otago and the Pacific Island Students Law Association, we are honored to be asked to officially welcome honorable guests today. Pacific Island Law Students Association are here in support of the Mahi, in support of the great Ethel Benjamin, and of course, our guest speaker for today. The other ceremony, carving ceremony in the Pacific, only happens when the prestige and elite of society happens, like the function today. We come to celebrate a wonderful woman, and we celebrate because in our lives as Pacific Islanders, we celebrate them every day. Don't look at the statistics. So without further ado, in the interest of time, we will continue now with the other sermon. Thank you.
Lama le kai sua, foku pule le kai kumua. Sauli mama kiu ko mai mama kawolo, fao pia lana fao afulau. A leo so kulu kai au ali ngulua. Wana fiu mai ala fiu mai kai fa msimo. Liwa mai usimo kulua ileku. Ale fiu aku le fiu mai kiusi. Kai gana kai ma walunga, le sa fai ngo lima kai fa msimo. Paiala valea, o sa whainga whamasiko ia te longe. O paiala valea, awa, na whiwhio, a inga makama mara kua inga kumua mapule kua mara kawa ina kai mara kuki. Sua mara mai whangua whonga i kulani sa ala masale mua. Kai nga me lau hiu masai mua. kiwa whau paro lau sa wali au rawa. Kau ke lau vea wale kokoli kukila!
Judge, wherever you go, you take Pacific with you. You take women with you. I had to know Samoa and Tampana. When we are fighting, when we are Samoa, thank you, Miss Spirit, for the honor to be part today. When we are
Masama!
but share it afterwards. We will now continue with the program. After they disappear from you. Let's give them a big hand.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. No mai, haere mai. Good afternoon and welcome to the 24th Annual New Zealand Law Foundation Ethel Benjamin Commemorative Address. My name is Elizabeth Rutherford and it is my pleasure to welcome you here on behalf of the Otago Women Lawyers Society. I would like to extend in particular a very warm welcome to our former address speakers, Justice Glazebrook and Professor Peart, our founding members, and to Judge Malosi's friends and family. Thank you for making the trip. A big hello and welcome also to those joining us by live stream. Shortly, I will hand over to the President of the Otago Pacific Island Law Students Association, Naomi Saulala, to introduce our honoured guest, Judge Malosi. But before I do, a few quick words on the purpose of the Ethel Benjamin Address. OULS has hosted this address for the past 24 years. We do this every year to honour Ethel's legacy, to celebrate the perseverance of a woman who believed in justice and education, had faith in equality, who worked hard despite the odds and went on to serve those she thought the profession was not serving well. In 1897, Ethel Benjamin became New Zealand's first female lawyer. 123 years down the road, here we are today. In the words of Judge Malosi, it only takes one and the others will follow. When choosing a speaker for the Ethel Benjamin Address, we look for women that have done incredible things, but that's almost a given. There's no shortage of talented women in the New Zealand legal profession. More than that, though, we look for women that embody the spirit of Ethel Benjamin, that belief in justice, equality, and community. As you'll hear from Naomi, Judge Malosi is firmly in that category. There's a wonderful short documentary about Judge Malosi in which she is described as visionary. Malosi by name, Malosi by nature. And my favourite, a comment by someone who said, "I always wanted to sit with her because she was the first PI woman sitting on the bench, serving our community." Just as Ethel paved the way for women lawyers, Judge Malosi has been a trailblazer for Pacifica lawyers and law students alike. I will now hand over to Naomi to formally introduce Judge Malosi. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Born and bred in the Deep South to two hard-working Samoan immigrants in a Samoan household where children are raised with the principles of Fa'a Samoa, Judge Malosi has grown up knowing that life is about service. With this foundation, Judge Malosi would grow up to live every brown kid's dream, to make our parents proud and serve our community. She earned a Bachelor of Arts in History and a Bachelor of Laws at Victoria University of Wellington and in 1994, Judge Malosi and her two best friends, Judge Laverne King and Ali'imoamua Sandra Alofi'Vai, founded the iconic King Alofi'Vai Malosi law firm in South Auckland, also known as CAM. There, they created what she rightfully calls a utopia. The three friends dared to want it all. So in their all-woman, all-brown working environment, they balanced life as barristers, mothers, and business owners. Being a minority in a predominantly white space, sometimes you don't realize you're holding your breath until you find yourself in a space where you can breathe again. I just know that CAM was that space for the Māori and Pasifika women working there. In 2002, Judge Malosi was the first ever Pasifika woman to be appointed to the bench, a great achievement not only for her, but for the Pasifika community. She then went on to make great strides in the law profession, helping to bring the change needed in the judiciary by establishing the Pasifika Youth Court in 2010, which incorporates Pasifika language and protocol into the court procedure. I and 9 other POSA members were lucky enough to see her in action at the Pasifika Youth Court, and it was uplifting and inspiring to see how the love and compassion she uses to judge touches not only the offender, but everyone in the room. Her work has also extended to Samoa, where she achieved another first, serving as the first Samoan female Supreme Court judge. There she established the Family Court and the Family Violence Court. I could go on and on about the great things she's done and what she means to us, but we are not running on island time. So, all the way from Auckland, Judge Malosi is here today as a pillar of success in the Pasifika community, a role model for Pasifika lawyers, a role model for women, and the 2020 Ethel Benjamin Address speaker. Without further ado, please welcome Judge Ida Malosi.
I ngā mana, i ngā reo, i ngā raurangatira, a tēnā koutou katoa. E le awa ma le whaaaloalo lava. O te whataalofa atu i le paia, ma le mamalu o le auwala au lia. Sui o mata ngā luenga ese whaatasi, ma mālo whaaloalo ngia, mālo le sui fua maua, ma le langi e mama. I feel like we've just heard the Ethel Benjamin address. We've certainly heard from a future deliverer of that address, and I thank you so much for your kind words, for your understanding of what the journey was and why I took it, and for being on your own journey. As I stand here about to deliver the 24th Ethel Benjamin Commemorative Address, my mind turns to the 22-year-old Ethel, who 120 years ago was admitted as the first woman barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court of New Zealand. I have reflected upon the decision of her Orthodox Jewish parents in the late 1860s to leave England, bound for an uncertain future in Dunedin. I have imagined them time-travelling to meet with my parents in the late 1950s when they arrived here from Samoa. They would have delighted in sharing the same stories of the potential they believed resided in their daughters. Ethel Rebecca Benjamin may not have lived in an era where it was possible for her to reach the dizzy heights in the law that woman who followed her have, but she was the one who unlocked the door and she threw away that damn key. It is my great privilege to honour her today. I've chosen the title All Rise for my address. I wish I could tell you I thought of it myself, but many of my friends, some of whom are here, already know it is the name of a piece produced by Coconut TV about me for the Daughters of Migration series, directed by the incredibly gifted Vea Mawhileo, Of course, judges are used to hearing those words every time we enter and exit the court. All rise for her honour, the judge. Those few words reinforce the privilege we occupy in that space and outside of it. Yes, brown privilege is also a thing. My hope for the daughters and sons of the migration is that we all rise. Not just one of us. Not 100. Not 1,000. Not even hundreds of thousands. All of us. Rise. My hope for Māori is that they go even higher. Because the higher they rise, the higher we will all rise. In 1989, when I was admitted to the bar, I vaguely remember hearing about this thing called the World Wide Web, but I still thought the greatest invention ever was the electric typewriter. To all those millennials out there, Google it. Mobile phones had only recently hit the market, but not the Otara market where I went on Saturdays. I could not have imagined in my wildest dreams that some 30 years later technology would have developed to the point it has, which includes this address being live streamed. Shout out to my sons who should be watching. And it eventually being uploaded onto some social media platform. That ability to reach people who would not normally be curious about a presentation such as this one, has significantly shaped my address. I seek refuge in the traditions of the Wha Samoa, my Samoan culture, which has a healthy respect for the written word, but reveres the spoken word. I've chosen the next generation, or the now generation, as I call them, as my audience. One or two were here today, but most will stumble across this address later. Whenever you see it, know that I see you. When I sought counsel from my wiser older sister about today, she reassured me that if I could reach my daughter and nieces who travelled from Auckland to support me, I would surely pierce the hearts and minds of others. There are a couple of aspects of my address today which many will find unusual. Some might think more than a couple. Firstly, there are no headings in my written paper. It starts at the beginning and ends at the end. What I say today may or may not be the same as the text. The reality is I never know where the Spirit will take me, but I am never afraid to follow. Anyone who has appeared before me in court will attest to that. Secondly, there is just one footnote to my paper. I'm sure that creates a footnote record for an address of this nature. By being deliberate in the way I have prepared and am presenting, what I really wanted to do is encourage others like me, Naomi, when called upon to speak at events such as this, to not be discouraged or intimidated by the sheer brilliance of the likes of the Ethel Benjamin alumni. Be inspired by them, as I have been. Be comforted by their words as I have been. Know that there is value, great value, in how we see the world and how we choose to tell our stories. Now more than ever we need our voices to be heard, because when they are, we give power to those who are trapped by circumstances some of us have escaped only by the grace of God. Through the power of the word, we can all rise. My solitary but mighty footnote is O La'u Malaga, my journey. There is a critical qualification to this, however. There really is no my in any journey taken by a Samoan. All that we do together, and we strive always in the service of others. That is best captured in a proverb which these days is referenced in just about every public speech given by a Samoan, in this country at least. Such is its importance in our culture. O le ala I le pole, o le tautua. The pathway to leadership is through service. Most Samoan grandparents would have their grandchildren put service to God at the top of their list. And whilst that was certainly the case in my family, I was lucky enough to be raised by two Samoan parents who allowed us to challenge the status quo within reason. Despite their encouragement of our critical thinking, I'm pretty sure they would not have approved of one of their grandchildren declaring herself an atheist some years ago. But she found her way back, and it provides us with endless amusement whenever it is raised, which is often by her brothers. Make no mistake, when I was growing up, we did not sit around a red table like the Pinkett Smiths, or for those who need an ancient example, the Waltons. We did, however, have long discussions with our formidable mother in particular about all manner of things. Excuse me. I remember thinking in my teenage years, my mother was just so amazing because she would always say to us, I didn't raise you to sit in the back of the bus. At the time when I knew so little about our Samoan history, beyond which I had been told and not taken much notice of, and in substitution became obsessed with the history of African Americans, I genuinely thought that was a reference to Rosa Parks. Alas, when my mother was summoned to the principal's office after I was caught smoking in the back of the bus, I realised what she really meant. By the time she finished with me, I am sure the principal regretted calling her. For the record, I never touched a cigarette again, and the principal never called my mother to come down to the school again. Whilst Rosa Parks remains one of my heroes, in my high school years I moved on from my African American obsession to the mafia, and then to Māori. No connection between the two, I might add. More than once in my teenage years I read Michael King's biography on Te Puia Herangi. I love the fact that she was often referred to as a princess, a regal brown princess in my mind. My history teacher, Bill Verrill, the most incredible human being, sourced every book he could lay his hands on to engage me in education. I was certainly not disengaged, but he knew learning about the potato famine in Ireland was not particularly inspiring for the 15-year-old me. No disrespect intended to the potato. It could not possibly be taken as offensive to the Irish, as Samoans are often described as the Irish of the Pacific. I have never quite worked out what that means, but I digress. Mr. Verrill's stories about hiding people in his home during the dawn raids did catch my attention, though, and I thereafter devoured anything relating to Samoan's history. In 1962, the independent state of Samoa was born. Our path to independence is stained with the blood of Te Pua Tamasese Lealofi III and 10 other members of the nationalist Mau movement whose catch cry was Samoa more Samoa, Samoa for Samoans. They were killed on 28 December 1929 by the New Zealand military police as they protested peacefully against the New Zealand administration. That day, Black Saturday, as it is known, is seared in our history, as are the last words of Te Pua. My blood has been spilt for Samoa. I am proud to give it. Do not dream of avenging it, as it was spilt for peace. I was incredibly moved recently to read about a group of young men in South Auckland who run a program to empower Māori and Pacifica through fitness, arts and service to the community. On one of their links under the name of their program are the words established 1929. That sacrifice made by our freedom fighters in the 1920s has resonated so strongly through the years. It was inspiring to see that the service of young men and my beloved South Auckland should be inspired in this way, and that fills me with such hope. These young South Aucklanders personify, in my view, the importance of the message in the poem written by Le Malu Samau Tati Simi in 1995. Identity. Educate yourself so you may understand the ways of other people, but not too much, that you lose your understanding of your own. Try things, Palangi. Not so you become Palangi, but so you may see the value of things Samoan. Learn to speak Samoan, not so you may sound Samoan, but so you may feel the essence of being Samoan. Above all, be aware and proud of what you are, so you may spare yourself the agony of those who are asking, what am I? This is my advice to young people and not so young people about identity. Spare yourself the angst of trying to prove how Samoan, Māori, Tongan, or whatever you are. It is a waste of time and energy. Being Samoan is like being pregnant. If you are a little bit pregnant, you are pregnant. And eventually it will be obvious to all. Don't go out and get pregnant. Olive Virginia Maliena Fau Nelson was a Samoan woman who was very clear about who she was and what she stood for. She was born in 1911 and died in 1970. In my mind, she is just as important in the history of our legal profession as Ethel Benjamin. Her father, Taisi Olaf Nelson, was the son of a Swedish trader and Samoan mother. He was a scholarly, wealthy businessman and a leader of the Mau in the 1920s and 1930s. Perhaps unsurprisingly then, he was considered a great threat to the New Zealand colonial administration, so much so that a series of events saw him exiled to New Zealand in January 1928 for 5 years. He returned to Samoa in 1933, only to be arrested 6 months later for being associated with the Mau. For his sin, in inverted commas, he was sentenced to 8 months imprisonment in New Zealand and was once again exiled, but this time for 10 years. The Labour government, which swept into power the following year, saved him. In June 1936, his exile was revoked. That was the same year his daughter Olive became the first Pacific graduate of the University of Auckland, in law as it turns out. She was also admitted to the bar in 1936. Olive was the brightest of the bright, winning the Butterworth Prize in 1931 for the highest mark in jurisprudence. While she was studying law, she would visit her father in Mount Eden prison and assisted his lawyer in preparing his case for release. When she returned to Samoa, she became that country's first barrister and solicitor. That she dared to occupy that male-dominated space is humbling. In 2002, on the occasion of the 40th anniversary of Samoa's independence, New Zealand's then Prime Minister Helen Clark offered the following apology. On behalf of the New Zealand government, I wish to offer today a formal apology to the people of Samoa for the injustices arising from New Zealand's administration of Samoa in its earlier years, and to express sorrow and regret for those injustices. Whatever one may think of that apology, it is recorded in history for all time. Olive Nelson stood her ground for her father for sure, but I have no doubt she stood just as resolutely for Samoa. In doing so, she played an important part in ensuring future generations of Samoa could all rise to their full potential. Olive Virginia Malienafo Nelson, we salute you. We need to celebrate more of these trailblazers because, as the saying goes, if we can see them, we can be them. On that note, I mihi to Dame Georgina Te Hiuhiu, the first Māori woman to gain a law degree who graduated from Victoria University, my alma mater, in 1972 and was then admitted to the bar the following year. As an aside, she gave the Ethel Benjamin address in 1999, and I note she had no headings or footnotes either. Māori and Pacifica woman in sync. I was stunned to realise that the first Māori man to become a lawyer, Sir Apirana Ngata, graduated in law and was admitted to the bar 75 years before Dame Georgina. It turns out that occurred in 1897, just a couple of months before Ethel Benjamin. Surely we will not have to wait 75 years to see the first Māori woman appointed to the Supreme Court. Knowing that she was the first Māori woman to graduate in law, I was thrilled to receive a letter of congratulations from Dame Georgina upon my appointment as a District Court Judge in 2002. I was even more thrilled that she was the Minister for Courts and Pacific Island Affairs, as well as Associate Minister of Māori Affairs in 2008 when the first Te Kote Rangatahi was established in Gisborne, in 2010 when the first Pacifica Court was established in Mangere, Auckland. There are now 16 rangatahi courts throughout the country and 2 Pacifica courts in Auckland. Both models operate as part of the overall youth court. In my respectful opinion, these courts are genius in their simplicity. They are held in culturally familiar surroundings, operating within the same legal parameters as all our courts, but with the critical difference being the powerful infusion of relevant cultural practices. By creating safe spaces for people to engage, sometimes impenetrable walls suddenly have windows to see through or doors to walk through. What I can say about young people appearing in the Pacifica Youth Court is that whenever I ask them to picture their boys, their gang, on one side of the room and their mother on the other, and then to walk towards the side they choose, they are always drawn to the woman who gave them life. When I ask them whether they want their younger brothers to follow in their footsteps, the answer is always a resounding no. When I ask them if they could turn the clock back and stay in school and work hard at their learning, the answer is always a resounding yes. That one always pains me. I have met young people who have been awarded scholarships to some of the most prestigious schools in Auckland, public and private. It is heartbreaking to read about how that opportunity has slipped through their hands, often through no fault of their own. It is a disgrace that children and young people in this country fall through the education cracks and no one is there at the right time to catch them. If it were up to me, the only way for children to be excluded from mainstream education would be by way of application to the family court or the youth court. But of course, my role as a judge is to apply the law, not make the law. One of the most powerful experiences for me in the Pacifica Court involved a Palangi Pākehā female police officer who had been badly assaulted by a young man. Most of the finer details are gone from my memory now, but I retain some clear images of what happened on that day. The constable was originally from a small town in New Zealand. She had recently moved back from Ireland, where she held a senior executive position in the banking industry. Her parents were understandably worried that she had joined the police and taken a posting in South Auckland, a place she had never lived before. She wanted a change. She certainly got that. The young person, his family, wanted to apologise in person to the constable. She bravely agreed to attend the Pacifica Court. She was stoic to begin with, protected by the blue uniform from having to show any emotion. She was there to listen. The boy's mother found a chink in her armour, however. I think it was the heartfelt way she apologised for her son. If you have ever witnessed a Pasifika parent apologising for the sins of their child, you will appreciate the emotion that was on display that day. The mother approached the constable and wrapped her arms around her. They sobbed in each other's arms. One by one, the elders of the Pasifika court, at least a dozen, lined up to offer the same comfort. They made the most moving speeches, thanking her for her bravery and her commitment to our community. They prayed the most prayerful prayers for her. She reciprocated with words of forgiveness for the young person and spoke in the highest traditions of the police about the importance of affording dignity and respect to all people she dealt with. If I recall it correctly, we never saw that young person before the court again. I hope the constable realised she gave more than she received on that day. And not just to the young person, we were all so uplifted by that experience. So how do we go forward after what has been such an extraordinary year? How do we ensure we all rise again? I suggest we try walking backwards into the future, looking always at what and who has gone before us and learning from that. For those Samoans who have heard about the Mau today for the first time, and there will be many, start your own journey to discover the magnificent people from whom we descend. You may find that you disagree with my interpretation of some events in our history. I welcome that critical thinking, discussion. You might even stumble across other people like Olive Nelson who should be brought out from the shadows and held up to the light so that we are reminded it was not just the men who fought for our independence. The women of the Mau were formidable also. Indeed, when the men had to flee to the hills to escape arrest, it was the women who smuggled food to them and continued to rally the support for the Mau movement at great risk to themselves and their children. When you have learned something of your own history, I strongly encourage you to show respect to Māori and learn about the history of this land from a Māori perspective. We owe them that at least, and so much more for the privilege of living here. If you do not already know about the friendship between Taisi and Sir Maui Pomare, who was the first Māori doctor and a politician, you will be amazed at how deep our relationship with Māori runs. Sir Maui is not acknowledged nearly enough for standing up to his own government in support of Samoa's fight for independence. I remember in 2013 when I was living in Samoa having a conversation with the then head of state, Tui Atua Te Pō Tamasese Efi, the eldest living grandson of Taisi, about his pending trip to Owai and Taranaki to attend the Sir Maui Pomare commemorations. He was deeply moved to have the opportunity to do that. Sir Maui's great-granddaughter, Miria Pomare, is reported to have spoken at that event about Taisi's attending her great-grandfather's tangi and how those gathered on that occasion witnessed for the first time the intermingling of Māori and Samoan customs as Taisi farewelled his friend on the marae in the traditional Samoan way. She also said this of Taisi and her great-grandfather's relationship. The things that drew them together then as highly intellectual and influential leaders, as exponents of their respective Māori and Samoan cultures, and as proud descendants of a great Polynesian tradition, are the same things that draw us together today. If what you have taken from this 24th Ethel Benjamin address is that the themes I have spoken of apply only to Samoans or Pacifica, then I express my deep regret and offer my apology. I have failed you. My hope was and remains to inspire us all to rise for ourselves and for one another. I believe with every fibre of my being that we can do that. If you are lucky enough to have already risen, be thankful and rise higher. Perhaps even take someone with you. Daughter, Sina, come stand with me and rise for South Auckland. Nieces, Leah Jane, eldest granddaughter, rise for Nana. Jordan, rise for your beautiful Tongan sons and that rich heritage that now runs through our family. Amina, rise for your hometown, Porirua, heartland for our people. As for me, I stand with the now generation and rise for all people, and am proud to use the incredible privilege of being a family court, youth court, and district court judge of Aotearoa, New Zealand, to do so. Ladies and gentlemen, if you feel so inclined, please all rise with me. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Wow. Talofa lava, tēnā koutou katoa, and welcome. My name's Catherine Donaldson. I'm this year's Deputy Convener, and I have the pleasure of closing this year's Ethel Benjamin address, but I don't know how I can follow such an amazing display from our Pacifica community. Thank you, Judge Malosi, for accepting our invitation to be this year's speaker and for giving such a thought-provoking and interesting address. My favourite comments probably are your advice to young people about educating yourself so that you can understand the way of others, but not so much. I think that's really relevant, particularly if you're living your life in service to others and living as a community, as I hope we all do, and particularly in our loving ours community, we like to work together with others, and to know each other is really important. As a sign of our appreciation in accordance with the Wee Owls tradition, we'd like to present you with a beautiful owls brooch, and it's been handcrafted by Dunedin jeweller Tony Williams. So the Pacifica community and the Pacific Island Law Students Association, thank you so much for giving up your time to be part of this event. Your welcome today was incredible. I was going to use the word special and beautiful and amazing, but it doesn't seem like one word can fit. This address wouldn't be possible without the support of the New Zealand Law Foundation, and each year the New Zealand Law Foundation sponsors ours to host this address. Last year, thankfully, we were given confirmation the Foundation would continue to provide sponsorship for a number of years to come. And given that the Ethel Benjamin address is so important to us ours, we're so grateful to the Law Foundation for their ongoing support so we can continue to honour trailblazing women such as Judge Malosi. We'd also like to thank the Otago University Faculty of Law and the Williams Trust for assisting us in past years and today. And of course, thank you, Nicola Peart, for these beautiful flowers that you've made. On a final note, I'd like to thank the Auckland Women Lawyers, Wellington Women Lawyers and the Christchurch Women Lawyers for organising this live stream event today in Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch. And we're just so excited to have had the Ethel Benjamin address reach a national audience today. And so that now concludes our 24th annual Ethel Benjamin address, and thank you all for coming today, and thank you for those on the live stream. We hope you've enjoyed this as much as we have. Now, if you'd all like to come and join us for some drinks and nibbles afterwards, you can make your way to the top of the stairs or take the lift to level 2A at the terrace, and we'll be having an afternoon tea. Thank you.